Okay, in this Autocad tutorial we're going to look at doing some basic solid modelling. It's going to build on the last tutorial where we were looking at just drawing line commands. We're going to do the same this time around, but I'm going to add a few new commands in there and you'll see the difference. We're going to start by doing exactly what we did before, which is drawing a line to produce a square, and I'm going to do 400mm up again, 400mm to the side. Notice I've got my radial lock on there. I'm going to bring it down 400mm and across the beginning. Now, if I just extrude these, like we did last time, this will produce a square that is not solid, and I can demonstrate this very quickly just by using the extrude command, selecting all of them and then making it 400 tall. And if I then go into my 3D view, we can see that it isn't solid, particularly if I alter that to conceptual view. So we need to make it more solid. One useful command is undo, which you can do just by clicking the arrow there, so we can just undo and bring myself back to the beginning. So that's now no longer extruded. If I want to make this solid, I'm going to go back to my home command, because there is actually in the modify arrow here a really useful tool. It's called join, and it's this one here. So if I click on join and select all my items, highlight the lot by dragging around them, and then you'll notice it asks me whether I still want to select any more. I don't. Press return. It now joins all those into one object, so that when I move my cursor over them or select it, it selects it all as one item. The difference here is that when I extrude this, it'll extrude it as one item and fill in the area between the lines, so that it thinks it's a complete solid. And I can demonstrate that just by moving it into the view there, and you'll notice it's changed the way it renders it out. If I go into conceptual, you can now see that I've got a completely solid cube. So one way of making solid objects is to take lines and join them together. If we go back to my home view and just go back to putting it to a top view, and you can do that by clicking there, or you can actually click on the arrows here at this side here, and you'll find it manipulates around any way you want. So this is quite a quick way of moving around items. If you click on the corners, it'll put you into three-dimensional view as well. So we'll go back to our top view, and I want to rotate this around so I've got top facing me here. So I'm just using the rotate icons there and these icons here, so that allows me to move around the object. If I go back to my home and click on the circle command, circles don't have to be joined. If I do a circle and then extrude it, and apply a height to that, let's make this 600mm tall for now, you'll find the circle is always a solid straight off. Right, what if I've got a more complicated shape? What if I've got lines and circles in the same shape that I want to make solid? Well, that also is quite easy, but it does require a little bit more effort, and it will require us to use the layer box the first time ever. In AutoCAD, layers are good because you can have different objects on different layers. This makes it very easy on a complicated drawing to be able to see what items are which, because one, you can assign different colours to the layers so they can look different, but two, you can turn certain layers on and off so that a very complicated drawing can be easily navigated through. Layers are also good because if you want to do working out, you can do it on a working out layer and then turn that layer off at the end. So we're going to start by doing some layers here to make our much more complicated shape. And I'm going to start by clicking on this little button here. It's layer properties. If you click on that, it brings off a box here. And this little one here is the new layer. Click on new layer and you can instantly give it a name, and we're just going to call our first layer setup, because we're going to do some working out drawing on this layer. And I'm just going to change it to red. So if you click on the little colour box there, you can click on any colour here and change it to red. The tick tells you which layer you're currently going to be drawing on. So we're going to, with setup selected, click the tick. That is now current. Get rid of my box here, and when I'm drawing, I'm now going to be drawing in my setup layer. So I'm going to go back to my view command, I'm going to go back into my top command like that. I'm going to use my mouse wheel just to zoom out a bit and pan that object out of the way. I'm going to start by drawing some shapes, and I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle. So I'm going to start by using in the home box my line command, and we're just going to start here. I'm going to make this 800mm long, and I'm going to come up to 300mm there, and then I'm going to use the snap here to have my 45-degree line. I'm going to come across 200mm here, and I'm going to draw a line here. Now what I want to do is make this line match up with here, and if I move to the edge here without clicking, you'll notice AutoCAD's clever, and it starts to bring up a little dotted line which tells me that I'm going to be perpendicular. So if I click there, I know that's perpendicular to there, and I can close it there. What I also want to do though is I want to now draw a circle that comes into this corner here and comes out into here, but I want the circle to be quite specific. I want the circle to touch the middle of here, so that it comes out to the midpoint of there. Now the way I'm going to do that is I need to do a little bit of setup to help here, and this is where this box here is really important. This one down below is called Object Snap, and you'll find that I've had this on, and whenever I'm drawing a line, Object Snap is clever. What it does is say, okay, you're at the end of a line here, and you can see that my green square tells me that I'm at the end of a line. If I click now, it'll snap to the end of that line. But depending on what I've got set, these two little triangles are nearest points. So if I click now, it'll snap to the nearest point on that line I've got. Or if I keep going down, it will tell me that's the middle of my line there. So if I click now, I know I'm in the middle of that line there, or I could be over to the middle of this line here. So there's many snap settings I can have, and you can get more of these snap settings by just right-clicking on it. You'll see I've got endpoint on, midpoint on, centers on. You can see if they're on because they're coloured in blue. Center is really useful because it allows you to snap to the center of a circle or an arc. Intersection, that allows me to snap to where two lines cross. I've got my extension on, which was the tool I used to make sure I was in line there. I've got perpendicular, so I can snap at 90 degrees something in nearest point on. You don't have to have all those on, but they're the ones I tend to work with most of the time. So we want my circle to come into here. I want it to be halfway up. Well, that's quite easy. I'm going to do a little bit of setup to help me. I'm going to draw a line here from the middle and just draw that out. Doesn't matter because it's only set up. I can now use my circle command. I'm going to start from the center here out to here, and of course if I bring it up to the end point of that line, I now know it's in the middle there. Okay, what I want to do is get rid of these lines here and this line here, so I'm going to use the trim command. And the trim is a really useful tool, but it's a multi-part tool. With most of these, if you click and leave the mouse over them long enough, it actually gives you instructions for how they work. So, using the trim command, it'll want to know what my trimming edge is. Well, my trimming edge is the item is where I want to trim against. So it's this line here and this line here, and I'll tell you why now. It's a multi-part command. It still thinks I want to select things. I don't anymore, so press return, you go into the second part. And I'm now going to trim, I'm now going to select the bits I want to get rid of. So here, if I click on this, it gets rid of that part to this line here and this line here. But I also made this a trimming edge as well. So if I click here, it trims up to that part, and here it trims up to that part there. I don't want to do anything else, that's all I want to trim, so press return to end the command. I'm now going to use the erase command to get rid of my line there. Brilliant, I've now got a whole series of much more complicated shapes, and I can use my join command for all these. So if I click on join now, I can actually join all of this lot together, press return. If I wanted to make even more complicated shapes, I'm going to start, sometimes I can avoid the join and the trimming. Another way of doing this is I'm going to add another circle here. I'm going to bring it up to the middle of there like that, and I'm then going to add a secondary circle from here and come out to there. Another way that I can then set the shape up is to do what's called the polyline command, and a polyline will automatically always make a solid. So here I'm going to create a new layer again. Because I've got my setup layer, I'm now going to create my polyline layer, and we'll just call this shape. I'm going to make it a different colour, something quite different from the red so I can see it clearly. I'm going to make it current and end there. Now polyline is a multiple command tool. So if I click on polyline, it will say down the bottom here, where do you want to start? Well, I'm going to start here. If I click, you'll notice that down below here I've got a load of options. Arc, length, undo, width. For the moment, we're just going to keep on drawing a line. We're going to trace over the top, so just using the snap. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click to here like that. I'm going to snap to click to here like that. And then when I get to here, and I'm just going to do that by intersection. I now want to go around this edge here. Well, a line isn't going to allow me to do that, but the arc command here is. And I can either just click on the arc command, or I can type A, the highlighted initial. I'm just going to click and go arc. And then it goes, okay, you want to draw an arc. It wants to know where the second point of my arc will be. You can click any point roughly on it. And then it will want to know where the end of the arc is. Well, the end of the arc is here. Now it tries to be clever. It thinks I still want to do an arc, but I don't. I need to do a line to get back to here. So I'm going to do a line back to here like that. And then I'm going to go back to my arc again. Then I want the second point on my arc, and the end of my arc, which is going to be the intersection there. I do want another arc, so I'm just going to click on second point here, and then end here. You'll notice there's the option to close the shape, and I'm going to click on close to close it up. I've now got, if I highlight it, my polyline shape. Right, so it's quite a complicated shape, and that is now extrudable. So if I go into extrude, click on that shape, press return, I'm going to make it 400 tool. I've now got my extruded shape, and if I go into my view, into isometric, there it is. So to recap, we've looked at using the modify join command to join objects together to be able to make them solid when they're extruded, and we've looked at the polyline command to trace over setup lines we've already done to help us. We've also looked at the very important object snap, which allows you to set up constraints so that when you're drawing lines they will snap to certain parts of other objects. We've also looked at creating new layers, and with the new layer dialog box you can change the colour, you can change which layer becomes current just by clicking the tick, but also they can be quite useful because they allow you to turn or freeze or thaw different layers. So these layers can be turned on or off to enable you to navigate through the drawing as it becomes more complicated.